Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody. My name is Shelby Jackson. I'm director of DeKalb's Entertainment Commission, and welcome to our 2021 Annual Entertainment Expo Series. Because of COVID-19, last year we converted our one-day entertainment expo into a series of 8 virtual panels and workshops that reached over 9,000 people. Our 2021 series will continue our mission to highlight talented and respected industry professionals while providing you with opportunities to connect, collaborate, and create locally, here, develop here, thrive here in DeKalb County and in Georgia. That is how we create a sustainable entertainment infrastructure and truly reap the benefits of our Georgia Film Tax Credit. Today, we will give you a special introduction to the team that helped to create the Georgia Film Tax Credit and whose commitment and continued dedication are directly responsible for helping all of us to grow in this industry. Without further delay, let's get started. Our host today is the executive team from Georgia Production Partnership, and we will start off with Darius Evans, our moderator and vice president of GPP. Hey, Darius.
Hey, Shelby, thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to the DeKalb Entertainment Commission's Entertainment Expo 2021. Again, I'm Darius Evans. I'm vice president of Georgia Production Partnership, and on behalf of our membership, our executive board, and our board members at large, we want to thank DeKalb County for allowing us to be a part of this fabulous event. And we also would like to thank our panelists for being a part of it. Our panelists today are all either founding presidents or past presidents of GPP. And like Shelby was saying, they were all very instrumental in the start and the lobbying for the tax credit that we all so love and depend on now. And without any further ado, I'm going to let them introduce themselves. And the topic of discussion today is going to be the origin story of the tax credit. They're going to talk about how they, as a team and as a group, came together to form GPP as an organization, as well as to lobby to get this tax credit started. If some of you may remember, or you may be familiar with this discussion as we did it in January as a part of GPP's Georgia Production Summit 2021. That was so well received, and with popular demand, we decided that we would bring it back and not only discuss the origin story of the Georgia tax credit, but also talk about where we go next. As you all know, we've been through a very tumultuous year as a country and as a world, but legislatively, we've also been through some major changes as it relates to the state and as it relates to our tax credit. So we want to discuss that as well. So I'm going to let each one of the past presidents introduce themselves. I'm going to start, ladies first. We're going to start with Miss Shay Bentley Griffin.
Hi, and thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to be here. I'm always excited to talk about our film industry, and I'm always excited to talk about Georgia Production Partnership. I do so very much recall how we all began. There was a point in time where we weren't sure we were going to continue to be in the film industry. We had a lot of things take place that sort of pushed us a little bit to the edge, and no longer that much of a viable film state. At that time, there were a few of us who gathered together and said, you know what, if we don't do something now, we will be the only generation that ever worked in the film industry in Georgia. And we just don't see that happening. So the group went together, and it, as was stated, I was the founding president of Georgia Production Partnership, served 4 years. And during that period of time, there was an awful lot of things we had to figure out as to how did we make a difference? What did we do? How did we go about getting those people who saw the film industry in Georgia, I think, as more a hobby kind of business. They never really took us much as a very serious business. And that was something that we all knew had to change. So it was during that particular time that we began to take ourselves, I think, a great deal more in a serious manner, and decided that we would do those things that other businesses did so that we too could be respected as a serious business. That was at that point we actually hired a lobbyist, which probably had been an unheard thing in most film industries in any other states. But we wanted them to understand how serious we were. And we realized very early on, if we did not have the support politically for our industry here in Georgia, we would never grow past a certain point. That was a great thought that we had. We just weren't quite sure what in the world do you do to go and convince the entire legislative branch and the governor and all other parties as to why they should be excited and want to have the film industry in Georgia and to support us. At that time, we hired Louis Massey, who is with us still after all these years, as a leading force for us to understand and to figure out how to proceed politically. So a small group of people who knew nothing about politics at that point became politicians. We spent an awful lot of time learning how that worked and what we needed to do. We also learned that it required our own kind of fundraising, because you had to get behind those politicians that you wanted to be behind us. So we started off, as I said, as a small group, but we began to grow over the years and we began to learn. I think it was an amazing time. It's the only thing I always want to say about it. We were a very rare breed of people who had decided that if we were not going to move to California, which many of us had friends who had done that, we were going to have to do something to make sure the film industry still came to Georgia. And there were a lot of things going on in the industry at that time that made that a challenge and made it difficult. So we began to learn. There was one particular thing that always worked, and I had learned this in my years as being during the years that I was as a casting director and at one point representing the state as the state's liaison out there. There was one magic thing, and that was if we could tell them we could save them money, then they would look at Georgia with a much more serious attitude. And so that is where really the whole process of beginning to think that we had to get a tax credit put together. As Rick and all can tell you, there was a whole process. Craig and we all remember the years that we went through the various stages of how were we going to get the money, how much money were we going to be able to get, most especially would there be any governor who would ever support us. So that was something that went on for quite a number of years. But we did begin to find that there was an interest in what we did. We were able to tell our story in a much more vivid and real way. And we began to work towards a tax credit. That to me was probably GPP's main mission always was to be a political group for our industry. We did a lot of other things, but our main mission, our main goal was how do we keep Georgia in the film industry? And how do we grow it to be where there is the potential for people to actually make a living in the industry? So many efforts went into many different causes, going to California, calling on the producers, calling on people there. And again, as I said, always talking about Georgia was a great place to shoot and that we indeed could save them money. So a huge effort began with this tax credit, and it was presented to Governor Perdue, and I'll have certainly Rick tell a little bit about the bill itself, because it had quite its own history and its own story of how we were ever going to get Governor Perdue to be interested at all in helping us with some type of. He was not interested in a tax credit, and as a matter of fact, when he formed his commission, he made it quite clear to us, bring him anything but a tax credit. after months of homework, we all realized there really would not ever be anything. We had to have a tax credit. And I think I'm going to be proud and say this today, after all these years, it was indeed a genius bill. And I give always a lot of credit to Rick. Rick came up with one of the most important parts of that presentation, and made it work. And we were able to present it to the governor, who did not want to see us and had no interest in our presentation. But one of the most exciting moments in this industry was when Governor Perdue, after having looked at the presentation the first time, and we continued to tell him how great we are as an industry and what all we could do for the state of Georgia. No one could ever do the PR for Georgia that we have done. And it's sort of funny today when I think that we said things like, hey, what if Gone with the Wind had the Georgia emblem on it? It would have gone all over the world and been seen by millions of people still. Well, our films will do that too. We will brand Georgia in such a way as they'll know us all over the world. So we gave this wonderful pitch about why we were important, how we would put people to work, all the good things that we could bring to this industry if they would just give us their support. And the magical moment was when we had Governor Perdue turn and say, "Show me that again." And we all looked at each other and smiled and said, "Uh-oh, we think he actually gets it."
Yeah.
And so in that regard, we got the bill started. So we'll turn this over to one of the other guys now, but I just simply say my background in this business has been this business. It has been my life. I have loved every moment of it. We have accomplished a lot of great things. Part of my work sent a lot of stars to Hollywood, which I'm extraordinarily proud of. When you see people like Walton Goggins and Kyle Chandler, and I could go on, and they're all talent from Georgia. That was, we did a lot of things so unexpected out of this marketplace. And so something for all of us to be proud of. So, hey, I'll get off and let someone else take it from here.
Shay, thank you so much. That you talk about the origin story. I think that was the complete story. And thank you so much, Shay. So Rick, we want to go to you. Give us a quick overview of your years at GPP. When did you start as president, and your involvement in this story that Shay just finished telling?
Well, I'll give everyone some perspective dating back to 1995, inclusive of Craig and others, and Fran Burst and many more. Just to let everybody know, the evolution of this industry locally and our advocacy has been out there for many, many years, but took its first formal step in 1995. And Steve Mensch, I remember Cheryl Meyer, Kathy Hardigree, Shay, Craig, myself, Tim McCabe, and others started coming together just occasionally, like Mary Max, just to have a lunch and figure out what our future prospects might be, keeping in mind that in 1996, of course, the Olympics were looming. And as we were hoping for this grand explosion of business after the Olympics, because of the eyes of the world were on Georgia at that time, we weren't certain what was going to happen. And what happened actually shocked and surprised us. Business did not come here in a wholesale or retail fashion. It sort of came and went. It was gone with the wind, so to speak. And I remember, Craig, you were there and everyone else was there. And as we started to move towards the formalization of what we wanted as a goal, we had to first define where we were in the world sphere. Canada, it turns out our business went away in the last decade of the century. In the mid to late 90s, it went to Canada because they had, like England, a way to give grants to filmmaking and other cultural endeavors. But they also had a disparity of international monetary exchange. Our dollar was much more powerful in Canada than Canada's was here. At some point, to about 30 cents on the dollar. and that would fluctuate. But during that time, we saw this great exodus of opportunity to Canada, to Australia, to Great Britain, all because their federal governments supported the effort. And then, of course, finance became a great concern. We didn't know how to compete. GPP formalized itself and incorporated in 1998. You heard Shay say she was our first president, then followed by me and then Craig and Fran together, and the March to the Sea. I mean, there are so many. We could talk about all the presidents, and coming up to great new faces like Darius, even right now, and Anissa, and we're trying to evolve as the industry evolves. But in '98, we became a corporation. Craig, feel free to jump in at any point. And as we started to march forward in 2001, we did our first effort with then Governor Roy Barnes, and we tried for an over-the-counter sales tax waiver for all goods and for services or goods that we could purchase in relationship to production. That's all we had. We couldn't compete with Canada. We couldn't do much more. And Michael Coles, if you heard of the Michael Coles Business School in Kennesaw State University, he was part and parcel to that because he was with the Georgia Governor's Film Advisory Commission at the time, and he helped engineer, with our advocacy from GPP, that sales tax exemption. Then we saw the evolution in states like New Mexico and Louisiana getting on board with tax credits in order to shrink the margin of disparity to Canada so we could bring at least business back to the United States, if not formally New York or California or even Georgia. The states had to participate. And once that 30% became 20%, became 10%, became 5%, we were all back in the race. Now they jumped in first, to be fully honest. In 2002, we sort of watched from the wings, and that was when the transfer of power went to Craig and Fran, 2003, 2004. And Craig, I think you're the longest running president we've ever had. You went through many terms. Yeah, for 8 years. So, and Craig was at the helm during both pushes for the tax credit in 2000, well, what was 2004 and 5, and then again in 2008. And then in the series of events where we've had to defend it over the years. More importantly, what people think our success was always there and it was easy and it was apparent. It was not. We had to struggle and learn, as Shay suggested. We had to become savvy as a government participant. Whether we were lobbyists, we were not functionally lobbyists. We had to get professionals to do that sort of thing. We had to raise capital, as Shay said, and organize ourselves in a grassroots fashion that was impressive and powerful. And so in 2004, guess what? We made our first try. We lost. We actually lost. We didn't lose by much. As the pendulum swung, Governor Perdue had just come into power and was trying to define his legacy and his organization as head of the state administration. And he didn't know quite what to make of us. And so we had to pitch him and bring him on board. And in 2004, he just wasn't certain of our destiny. And so the re-evolution of the Georgia Film Advisory Commission began again in the summer of 2004 after we failed in the spring of 2004. And Ed Spivey came on board at that point. Shay became vice chair of the commission at that point. It became more expansive. We had a little more influence. And by 2005, we were able to cobble together a package that the governor did approve, which only gave us tax credits in the range of 9% to 17%. And we laugh about it because it was a tiered aspect. If there was production outside of major metropolitan areas in Georgia, you would get an extra 2%. If you hired Georgians, you would get an extra 3%. If the sun and the moon and the stars all aligned on a Thursday, you would get an extra 2%. That was sort of, we were making a deal. And we tended to average between 11 and 13%, which at the time in 2005 was competitive. But at that time, New Mexico and Louisiana respectively went to 25 and 30% within 6 months of our getting our first incentive. And there we were, Craig, you remember, we're all staring at each other going, how do we compete now? We were able to get the film about Marshall, the Marshall football team, and a couple of other projects in that first year, and then it all went away again. And so back to the drawing board, and Craig, I'll let you take over a little bit here. And since you were co-president at that time, and tell them a little bit about our strategy and our outlook.
Sure. So I'm Craig Miller. My company is Craig Miller Productions. I'm a producer. I've been in the business for 36 years. I went to the very first Georgia Production Partnership meeting, which was actually the Atlanta Production Partnership meeting at that moment. And the history, as you've heard it from Shay and Rick, we sort of evolved and made our way with good advice on our advocacy from Louis Massey, our lobbyist. And what was really interesting about Georgia at that time was we were just thought of as a location. If Georgia, if you wanted to shoot something that was either big city like Atlanta or small town like Covington, then Georgia might entice you to come to shoot your movie there. And with the work of Rick and Shay and Ed on the Film Commission board at that point, the commission was able to put together a really nice package with the added incentive that there was a marketing tool. And this idea was brainstormed by Rick, which would be that we would put a Georgia peach logo at the end of the movies that shot in Georgia, and that peach logo would live with the film as long as the film was being shown on TV or in theaters or wherever. And that marketing aspect of the law that was passed really, I thought, was the key that made us slightly different than everybody else. And so it got us a 20% incentive on the just bringing and shooting your project in Georgia. And then you got a 10% uplift if you included the peach logo at the end of the project. Rick designed us a logo that is still the logo we use today. And it was a fabulous new idea that Governor Perdue embraced, and that later governors have also signed on and promoted us as a great industry, putting Georgians to work. It was really interesting that, first of all, we were a location, and then we evolved into building infrastructure, because back in the original, back when we were just thought of as a location, we had maybe 1.5 sound stages in Atlanta
Sure.
that we could work from.
He's absolutely right. He's absolutely right.
Yeah. Now there are over 100 stages and over 20 studios that are here in town, and there's a commitment to brick and mortar, which that's good because that puts Georgians to work. And then after that, we started educating people. So Georgia took on something new, which we promoted and encouraged, which was the Georgia Film Academy. So they're actually training people along with the college and university system of Georgia and the technical colleges of Georgia to get workers on set and make us a viable place. Because in the beginning, if we had 5 or 6 movies shooting in town, we thought we were great, but we had to bring in people from other states to get the work done. So by the time we got the Georgia Film Academy moving and we tied in with the Board of Regents, we were able to get lots of people educated in the industry. And today, today, I saw this morning, there are 45 productions shooting in Georgia. We reached our all-time high, which was 48 productions just a few weeks ago. And most of those workers are Georgia workers. Sure, some of the above line are people like producers and directors are coming from other places, but the bulk of people that are at work are Georgians, and that's a great thing.
Yeah, and what's Craig is one thing, I don't mean to interrupt, but the thing is, these are simultaneous productions. So
right,
he's
right. These are
48,
all going on at the same time, right?
Right, and when he was talking about the growth of infrastructure in the studio space, people wanted to shoot outdoors. Hey, that was great. They loved our locations. Perfect. We've got plenty of locations. But it was the development of the infrastructure through sound stages that were principally built to be sound stages. And then there were also conversions of warehouse space and adapted other space. But without those components, we couldn't have handled the additional size. And Craig, you can explain it too. It's we would go through growth spurts and go, how many films could we crew up? If we're just shooting locations, we got crew. Well, we're deep about 5 or 6 crews at one point, but there were 10 or 12 films that wanted to be made simultaneously. Then they wanted some more space. They wanted studio space. And you go, okay, so we kept building our infrastructure, crew, Mike Aiken's IA, SAG-AFTRA, people growing, DGA, WGA, Cinematographer 600, all started coming here. I remember when there were 5 people in DGA. There are now over 100. There are now over 100. I remember when Mike Aikens had 400 in IA. They're over 5,000. SAG had approximately 600 members when all this began. We just went over 3,000. So you're seeing the growth of the team, and we factor that in when Craig and others, because Craig's not bragging right now, but he was the chair of the most recent incarnation of the Governor's Film Advisory Commission for a number of years. And the thing is, this is, you attract people based on what? Your talent and depth of your bench. You got a starting team, but you got to have a bench. Oh, you need studios. I need more than 1 studio. I need 10 studios. I need 20 studios. All of a sudden, here comes EOE Screen Gems. And the sound stages look like the sound stages in LA. And then along comes Pinewood, which is now Trilith. And they built out so fast. I think that was the fastest build out of any studio space ever anywhere. And then you've got Blackhall Studios, and then you've got, you know, so many more that popped up along the way. Suddenly we were matching talent and infrastructure crew with infrastructure that was space. Now we can accommodate 15 films simultaneously, 20, 30, 40, now 45. I see no reason why it won't be 60. And the thing is we're now queued up so far back for these spaces and our talent, you would be hard pressed to find space to shoot out the rest of the year.
That's very true. And Lee Thomas from the state office will definitely echo that. Craig, you mentioned that Georgia used to be considered just a location, quote unquote. What's the difference now? Is it the infrastructure? I've heard terms like, you know, the world's largest backlot, and that was just recently. But what makes the difference between then when we were just a location and now? Is it the infrastructure that we've built? Is it the manpower that we've trained, or all of the above? What makes the difference now that we're an actual industry here in Georgia versus just a location?
Well, I think the thing that helps us most is that we've been able to put Georgians to work at good jobs. And that echoes through the halls of the legislature. Whenever anybody asks the question about what are all these incentives going to, and these projects wouldn't be in Georgia without an incentive, you know, so they are actually bringing their work to Georgia. There's also included in this post-production, so you get work after the project is shot. But I would say the leading factor is putting jobs on sets. Infrastructure now is something that, wow, it's incredible, because here's the deal. A studio lot is really an investment from some investor who's going to then rent space to big production companies and studios out of Los Angeles. So, or local productions that we're starting to see come up and be of the size where they can afford a studio and not be on location. So I think the key there is actually that now we're getting local business, Georgia business, to invest in what we're doing. Trilith Studios is owned by Dan Cathy. Blackhall, which just was sold, was totally a concern of one individual, Ryan Millsap, who came from California, set up the studios, and made them so successful that he has been able to sell them to others, or sell it to another owner. The interesting thing about it all is, though, that these are individuals, the people investing in studios are Georgians that care about having an investment in Georgia. And when you get big investors involved in all of this, they also have the ear of the legislature. And so when you're talking about big, huge investments in Georgia real estate, it quickly gets the ear of everybody in the legislature. And the fact that you're filling them with Georgians to do the work even excites them more. So it's been a big plus for us.
Right. And
Are we not?
go ahead, Shay.
I was just going to say, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not exactly certain of the ranking, but as I understand it, our film industry is the second leading industry in the state of Georgia. I mean, we went from not even existing to being the second biggest industry in this state.
Right.
They have
you have aerospace, agriculture, technology, and we're in play. We're in play. And we're not just throwing, as Craig suggests, warm bodies at it. We're sending qualified professionals with many years of experience and also developing new professionals. And so
That's right.
creating the continuum through education, through the Georgia Film Academy, and much, much more. And Craig hits it right on the head. And this is what always appeals most at the state capitol is, are we using Georgian? And I don't think I'm estimating incorrectly. If we could have staffed 50% of a picture in the beginning on a large budget operation, we were lucky. But over a period of time, we're now staffing 70, 80, 90, 95% of shows, with the few people coming from external executive producers, perhaps directors, and of course, above the line star actors, because names put bodies in seats or in front of screens, however it goes, you got to have names. Craig just produced another film. He's done a couple of films, and he knows even in a lower budget range, and his budgets are growing, that you've got to have celebrities. So if we could start to top 90 to 95% of the people power involved in a film production, we've done an enormous job in service for the state.
Exactly.
So that's an amazing transition to workforce development. We actually have a question from the audience. Has there been any direct educational opportunities targeted to and for marginalized communities here in the state?
The Film Academy, I know, is reaching through the state educational system, which is the technical college system, and then, of course, the university system side by side. And many of them have programs to satisfy diverse growth and inclusion. And so we're seeing programs being developed in state colleges and universities that heretofore didn't have them. And the body at large of new brain power, new creatives, new people, whether they're in front or behind the camera, is now coming from everywhere in Georgia. And that's, the people that are privileged down to the people who lack privilege. And so we're seeing that growth. Is there a definitive program that says X, Y, Z? The state hasn't sponsored that, but within its university system, the technical college system, it is reaching that base.
It's just reaching it, yes.
And right now, the GFA is roughly, Georgia Film Academy is roughly 51% minority students, and is unique in the fact that it's a 3-course program, a 3-semester program. In the final semester, you're actually interning on big movie sets. And so it gets the graduates, it's a certificate program, but gets the graduates of that program directly on a set, in through the wall, in contact with people that are going to be hiring them in the future. And there's some great success stories of how people have either come out of high school, come out of college. You can use the Hope Scholarship on that. So that's an avenue of approach. And when they're done, they know people on the industry. They can get their union card, because most of these big productions like Marvel Comics type productions are unionized set. We're a unionized business. So the opportunity to be able to get into the union and then get on the job list for future projects is a great incentive to go to the Georgia Film Academy.
Well, let me also use Craig as a good example here. And Shay, you wanted to say something. I'll let you go ahead and add something. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to be supportive of what that has meant to be able to take the already well trained and well experienced folks that we had in our crew base, and then to be in a place to teach all the new people to join into that step. This is something that has never been done anywhere else in the country. So we created what we needed to have in the next part of success. We created that, and now that in itself has become extremely successful. So it's an interesting fact, because every time you're in California or you talk to people from that area of the world these days, everybody's trying to move to Georgia. And we're more or less like, oh, well, don't be in a hurry, because we already now have so many wonderful, experienced Georgians in place. We do not need all these transplants. And it's sort of funny to see that there would have been a day when no one would have thought you would leave California and come to Georgia to continue your career. So
Right.
that in itself is a huge statement of where we've come from.
Yeah, and the growth in our numbers shows that there are a lot of transplants from New York, from the UK, from Chicago, from Los Angeles, and more coming here. But I would start it off on a tangent to talk a little bit about what Craig just did as a premium example of dealing with Columbus State University. He shot a film down in the greater Columbus area. They have developed a plan. Their city is on board. Their educational structure is on board. And Craig, talk a little bit about that and how much local support and education and outreach you were able to do there, because that's happening not only in Columbus, but other places. Let's start there.
Yeah, so in 1917, I shot my first feature film. The only reason I got to shoot a feature film in my life is because of the Georgia Film Incentive. I had a great career doing corporate and commercial that is still ongoing, but the opportunity to make a movie seemed pretty elusive to me even in 1917, and things came together.
You mean 2017?
I'm 2017. Thank you. Not that.
You're not that old, Craig. I know. You look great.
I might live that up.
I'm doing the math, Craig. That was amazing.
There you go. So we worked a great deal with the Columbus Film Commission, with the Columbus State University, who has a dedicated GFA program there, and with the city fathers in Columbus to put a movie in Columbus. And it was a great opportunity because as the industry ages in Atlanta, there are lots of opportunities across the board. There's just been a major film shot in Tifton. There was Valdosta's hosted a film recently that shot there. Fitzgerald seems to be
Fitzgerald
movies like crazy. I
little old Fitzgerald is doing it. Let me tell you. And Albany, Georgia, is also developing studio capabilities, even beyond what Columbus is doing. I know they're not quite yet ready to launch, but they're in development. And a former member of GPP down there is spearheading that whole effort. So you're starting to see the growth not only to Savannah and Macon, but now to Columbus, Albany. It'll happen in Brunswick.
Yeah, Savannah is our second leading market,
Right, exactly. And we've always had an eye on wanting to make sure that no Georgian is more than 1 to 2 hour drive from a resource that helps them come into this industry, whether it's a resource like going to the academy or extensions of the academy, through the university system. And I mean, as far flung as the northwest corner of our state, all the way down to the Gold Coast, people are starting to do things. Of course, SCAD is developing programs that are probably on board before the academy. And so it's just one of these things where now it's a statewide, deep-rooted scenario. And I'm glancing at questions as they're coming up. And I appreciated Bethany's question. I'm looking at Robert Starling, and I hope that answered your idea. Are there more efforts happening? Yes, there are. Other good news, Robert, is that places like Trilith and Blackhall, while it's not in Ryan Millsap's hand anymore, there is a great desire to develop original content. So while some people are doing it as smaller independents like Craig and more, Rainforest Productions, not so small anymore. Believe it or not, Rainforest began, Rob Hardy and company, way back in the 90s, and they were making $250,000 films.
Mhm.
The next thing you know, it's 20 years later, and they're making films for 30 million, 50 million. And then, of course, the evolution of Tyler Perry here is a story all within itself, probably best told by Tyler himself and others associated more closely with him. But you see, that what we created was opportunity. And I like to say to everybody watching here in the state of Georgia, what we've created is the best opportunity space in the world for people that want to be in this business per capita. Stop and think about it. I'll use an example of SAG-AFTRA. We have 80,000 plus members in Los Angeles. In New York, we have 35,000 plus members. In Georgia, we have 3,000. And yet, depending on who you're talking to on any given day, Georgia is competitive with those two large cities, and our pecking order seems to shift and change. But when you stop and think about the volume of opportunities versus what we have here, and if we can prove collectively and learn our crafts and study hard and work hard, we begin to show the world that we're second to none. No matter how the statistics might show, they have to have trust in our ability to do this. So we're counting on the evolution of everybody that's watching too. It started with a handful, like I said, GPP, there weren't 10 of us, Craig, Shay, there weren't 10 of us at the table back in 1995. Eventually we went to Manuel's Tavern because it was the political place to go. We're told all Georgia politics happens at Manuel's. Well, we moved to Manuel's. And then we became 25, then we became 50. Now we're representative probably by our memberships through various organizations, over 10,000 people. Now that 10,000 people do not come to our meetings, Darius, as you know, or watch us online, but we have representatives within groups like Women in Film and many more that participate in their given meetings.
That's absolutely right. We reach over 10,000 people in the state, and we're super proud of that through our partnerships like DeKalb County and other municipalities around the area. We have a very broad reach as an organization. And I want to talk a little bit about the future now as we start to run out of time. We've fought back as an organization and as a state a lot of challenges legislatively lately. And we have an even bigger fight coming up in the next few years as the political landscape changes around the world, actually. And let's talk a little bit about how we stay on this trajectory and how we maintain our position as a leader in the industry in this state, with all of the challenges that some have to do with production directly, most or some don't have anything to do with production at all. But because we're such a location state, we are beholden sometimes to the news cycle. So some bad news comes out about some legislation or something, and there's always a threat of New York and LA, Hollywood pulling out. How do we as a state kind of combat that and thrive through it?
Who would like to go first? Jay, you want to start?
Well, I think that we have started, and I think that we'll become more and more active and aggressive in this in the years to come. We will not be the film industry we would like to be until we ourselves can create it all. And we know that we have the writers here. We have it all. There is nothing, Craig, Rick, either one of you tell me if I'm wrong, but I say there's nothing missing in our package right now that doesn't make us a strong, independent industry right here on our own. Now, that was in the conversation we talked about, where do we rank in the state? In what order do we rank? I think that no matter who sits up at, as I always used to call it, guys, the big house on the hill, I don't think it matters totally who all sits there now. I think that our industry has created such a strong definition of who and what it is and what we bring to the state. And that's what's going to always be important. What do we bring to the state? And we now know you don't build studios like what we see now being built here and not know that we are a real and thriving industry. So I think those who try to go up against us and find negative places that in regards to our industry are going to find themselves in a battle of experienced politicians now. We may not have known much of what we did when we began, but there's enough of us now that do have that experience. And we've worked with people. This is Craig and was talking about being in Columbus and Savannah. We've worked all over this state now, and we know people in every area. And I think that when we have opposition go up against us, I think we'll be strong enough to represent ourselves in such a way that will be very hard to dismiss this time around. And I think that as we continue to do what we're doing, and that is this bring along the whole next generation of filmmakers, that we are responsible for seeing happening in this state right now. So you don't just take out just this generation and what we're doing now. If you don't encourage this industry, you take out us next generation of people who would be looking for those jobs and those opportunities here. But I think we've all learned there is nothing magical except history that would still say, gee, LA must be the place. Those of us who still make continuous trips out there, I am sure, I know for a fact for myself, to go today and think of LA as I remember it 20 years ago when I used to go, I don't find any great absolute attraction to going there anymore. And I think that that's begun to happen all over. So that I think that Georgia's become that new, real possibility. And when you do have people like Tyler opening up and being so creative in what he's doing, and I kind of think that we are a little bit more kinder, more genuine industry here in our state. Those of us that were here when we were really learning how to do these jobs often remark about what a great state it was to have learned in, even for our own selves, because we took the time and we made the effort to care about the industry. It wasn't just about money. It was about the people who were in the industry, and it in many ways still is. So to me, I think that I just feel like we will be okay, because I do believe that we have put down our roots so very deeply here, and we know what needs to be done and needs to have to happen. So as you guys know, I've been on a little bit of a medical hiatus, so I might not be quite as up to speed as the two of you out on the front line right now, but I'd be interested in knowing if you all don't agree that, yes, we've had somebody come up against us every time we've turned around, and they come up against us for reasons sometimes that are just so difficult to even understand. But I do believe that we have the power and the strength to withhold against it. What is your thought on that, Greg? Rick?
Greg, you go ahead.
I think that that's true. We can't exist without a tax incentive, but we do have very strong support from our legislature, and it comes from all over the state. I'm in Savannah right now. Ron Stevens is a great example of a legislator who cares about the film industry and works hard to make it not only understandable and desired in Savannah as we do in Atlanta, or when we travel to other locations. I think the key right now is content development and investors. right now, the preponderance of certainly the big movies are coming from LA studios. And we love those. And the incentive was actually designed more to draw these big tent pole type productions to the state because they bring with them a whole lot more money. But now we're starting to see writing rooms and movies that are directed and by Georgians and written by Georgians, and that they also have a huge investor groups that are coming together to say, okay, I can take on a Georgia production. Let's see what's out there, and that makes us all feel good about the industry and where the industry is going in the future.
Right. And keep in mind, he mentioned Ron Stevens, the representative from Savannah, was one of our original advocates, along with Mitch Seabob, Butch Parrish, and others that helped us from day one. Still to this day, Ron Stevens sits on now, to talk about the evolution of our state, he now sits on a full committee that is dedicated to arts and education and entertainment industry. Heretofore, we had never had our own committee. They tried it as an ad hoc or as a sort of a casual group last year. And then the Speaker of the House, by the way, the Speaker is a great advocate of our industry, and we can't thank him enough for his years of support. I mean, our political alliances we've built through time, I think, are quite steadfast. There's always going to be the occasional rock thrown by somebody. Somebody always has a dog in the fight for some reason. I can't predict their agendas, but I will tell you this, there will always be another agenda. That's the one thing we've learned in politics. So no matter how political winds blow and what side of the territory you seem to fall upon politically, understand that people see the economic benefit of what we do now first and foremost, as it translates into not only job growth, it translates into real estate growth, sometimes urban redevelopment around areas that have studios, and that has a huge impact. The old Fourth Ward and all these other things are coming back. The area around Screen Gems is coming up. The area that Blackhall Studios is in is now undergoing a lot of urban redevelopment because suddenly there's economy there. You're seeing it in Union City at a mall where people are putting things together. And so there are a lot more benefits than just the original marketing branding pitch that we set aside that made us different from every other state. And remarkably, no other state has copied it the way we've done it. It is really remarkable, but better for us. So understanding your question, Darius, is no matter what happens under the Gold Dome, we have a very proactive and reactive team already thinking ahead on how to play the ending. We have more friends at the Capitol than we have enemies. Understand that. That took years to develop. Believe me, the educational process never changes. Every time the State House seats shift, whether in the Senate or in the House of Representatives, that is another re-education effort because as many as 10, 20, 30% of that body changes over time. And of course, there's attrition. People age out or move on to other bigger and better jobs, whatever they do. So that effort is continuing.
Well, guys, we have come so far thanks to the foundation that you guys have laid, and there's a whole lot more work for us to do as an organization and even as municipalities like DeKalb County. But we do want to thank you guys so much for the foundation. We want to thank you for all the work that you continue to do to promote our industry here in the state of Georgia and around the world. We just owe you a great debt of gratitude for all that you have done and for all you continue to do. Thank you so much, Rick. Thank you, Shay. Thank you, Craig, for your time today and for all that you do and who you are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thank
thank you
you for having us.
so much. I'm going to jump in at this point again. And like Darius just said, thank you, Rick. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Shay. Thank you, Darius. You guys have given us so much information on today. We appreciate all of the work that you all are doing in the industry. and for putting Georgia for real on the map. We really appreciate you. But before we go, I am going to ask each of you, and Shay, I'm going to start with you, of course, ladies first. If you just had one takeaway that you wanted the participants or the audience to capture from what you said today, what would that be?
I believe that, first of all, get involved, understand what's going on, be there in the numbers that you might need to be when the time comes to stand for our industry. I think that certainly was the lesson we learned early on. And as some of those of us who are getting a little older now and are drifting also into other areas of our careers, we need all of you. We need all of you behind us taking up that support, learning. It's not enough that you just say, I want to be in this industry. You must be invested in this industry. And that means knowing who these people are, understanding how the system works, so that when you're called upon to stand somewhere, that you do understand what's necessary and what is needed for it. And my second biggest wish that comes from it, Rick mentioned it, Craig has mentioned it, I want to surely hit it again, and that is to say, we do not intend to be a location industry. We didn't start out thinking that even all those years ago. We may have known that was the only direction we had to go at the time, but we are a very creative, and this is a real creative state with lots of talent in it. So the next step is really truly to stand on our own and to be just known as another center in this country or in this world that creates great talent, knows how to create great projects, so that one day we don't have to wonder or worry about whether or not someone down in the Gold Dome likes our industry or doesn't like our industry, heard something, saw something, somebody didn't get cast in a film and that made them mad, or somebody didn't get a job they thought they were going to get. So now we don't like the film industry anymore. We know all of that. We know how all of that works. So we now must be an industry so capable of standing on our own, not depending upon if we're well liked, because we should be well liked, but not dependent upon that anymore. That would be my biggest real dream for our industry. And I encourage all of those of you out there listening, understand how important that is, that you really want to help create an independent film industry in this state, that we don't get scared every January about who's coming after us and what fight must we have. Our energy of our people needs to be put into our creative process, not down there at the Capitol worrying about who has come up with some idea that would maybe lessen the value of our industry.
You're here.
That would be my wish.
Great. And we've got about 5 minutes because we want to be true with our time. So Craig, I'm going to ask you the same thing. What is your takeaway that you want everyone to leave with today?
So if you're a Georgian and you are creative and you like the movies and would like to be in the industry, this is your time. Never before has it been the opportunity to be a part of this industry, a growing, thriving industry right in your own backyard. And if you miss this opportunity, it's just a shame, because it's there, it's accessible, and it's ready to go. So get to work and work on your dreams.
Awesome. Rick, I'm going to ask you the same question. What's your one takeaway?
Our takeaway is we have come to the place in time where, as I said before, we have the best opportunity space to enter and become a force in this industry. Limits are placed on us from external resources, some of it from their own political needs, some of it from their own psychological desires, and they don't want to be dethroned. The point is we have now grown to the point where the limits are only those placed upon ourselves. I'm telling you to throw those aside. Anything can be done. We didn't know that we could do this when we started. We had no idea how to do it when we started. We learned. Right now, you may be sitting there watching going, I don't know how to do this. I don't know what to do next. We were no different. but we found a goal, we found a focus that we could share as a community. And while you're talking to just a handful of us, I can't begin to tell you the numbers and numbers of people that contributed to this effort. Think of it like a stone being thrown into still waters. It starts with a small center and then concentric circles build out. You are now those tentacles. You are now those concentric circles that we depend on to keep it going. And you can do it. The takeaway is the time is now. You are in the right place. You have to do it. And we look forward to helping educate you, bringing you in like DeKalb is doing things to recognize your personal strength and then act upon it. Act upon it. I know you can do it, but I can't wait to see you out there.
Awesome. Right place, right time. And all right, Mr. Darius, we started off with you. We're going to close it out with you as well. What is your takeaway?
My biggest takeaway is get involved. Organizations, grassroots organizations like GPP are essential to making this industry run, keeping it alive and keeping it thriving. We're committed to education. We're committed to lobbying to keep it alive. And we just encourage you to join us. Visit us at georgiaproduction.org. You can look for us on Facebook at Georgia Production. Georgia Production Partnership on Facebook, and on Instagram and Twitter at Georgia Production. Please join us in our struggle, join us in the fight, join us in the advancement of the state and counties like DeKalb County. We'd love to see you and work with you.
Wonderful. And I am going to ask each of you, if you will please share your contact information in the chat so that the panelists will be able to reach out to you. So those websites and your links that they can get in touch so they can know how to get involved. Shay, I'm going to ask you if you can speak yours. I know you're on the phone, so if you can also just give your contact information, like your website or anything where you can be reached as well.
You may have to unmute her, Leslie.
Okay. Okay, Shay, I see you're muted. I'm trying to unmute you, so I'll see. But we know through through GPP, you'll be able to get in touch with everybody. So if you would just stay in touch with us, this will be on our Facebook page, as well as on the DeKalb Entertainment Commission website. So you all are more than welcome to be able to view this again, and you'll be able to catch everything in the chat. So again, we want to thank each one of our panelists again so much. You gave us so much information. We're so excited. We're looking forward to hearing more from you, seeing you again. To all of our audience attendees, we thank you so much for joining us. But listen, we're not done. This is just the beginning of our 2021 Expo. So every second Tuesday from now through October, we will be doing our Expo, our virtual Expo. So you can join us here again. So our next one is going to be on, give me a second, let me pull that up, on June the 8th. At 1:00 p.m. we will be here, and we will have the Georgia Music Partners will be doing a panel for us at that time. So again, thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. We appreciate you, and have a good one. We'll see you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.